All right, welcome. Thank you for being here this morning as we study together. Today, the lesson is Chukat, which means statute. And we're going to go through the Red Heifer sacrifice today, and we're going to go through some other stuff as well. I just want to give you an update on kind of the season we're in so that you are prepared. This is a month of Tammuz. Tammuz is a month where the people had worshiped the golden calf. I am seeing so much unfolding so quickly that it would not surprise me. I'm not going to say that something's going to happen, but because I obviously don't pick dates, but it would not surprise me if we had some sort of false deception show up very soon in this month. I've always said that this is the month of Tammuz, which is usually July-ish, where the golden calf will show up, the false Christ, the false Messiah. I'm seeing a lot of things where I am, where things are they're unfolding or they're being set into place. Where I am, all the grocery stores now have railings and gates. There's only one grocery store left in town that doesn't have gates and railings with some sort of device on it that opens and closes the gates. Our Walmarts have railings going all the way through them now, so you cannot get in or out anywhere without, there's like a railing everywhere. So I don't know how it is where you are, but I'm finding that very interesting that this stuff is kind of being implemented. Last week, our local grocery store didn't have any inventory because one of our local grocery stores didn't have any inventory because their system was hacked. Their inventory system was hacked and they weren't able to order new inventory. So they had nothing on the shelves. Yesterday, I went into Walmart. Should I tell them this? Yeah, okay. Yesterday, I went into Walmart and you know how when they have this, they scan, when they scan you do your self checkout, they usually have somebody at the self checkout that's very like minimum wage worker. They're not paying close attention. You usually have to flag them down. They're not really like on top of everything. You can kind of tell that they're just there getting their paycheck, right? Yesterday, when I went through the self-checkout, some of you guys will get this. I'm not going to say it out loud, but some of you guys will understand what I'm talking about. So there's in Canada a health minister. And she has a very particular look to her, okay? She has an Adam's apple kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? And she's the health minister of Canada. The person that was working in the Walmart that I went through yesterday, the self-checkout, and I don't know that anyone would notice this but me. And it's really interesting that I went through Walmart yesterday because I hadn't been planning on it, but then my daughter requested something and so I went last minute. And this person that was working the self-checkout was hyper vigilant. She was scanning. She was very aware of every single thing that was going on. Okay. Now remember, our Walmarts now have railings and da-da-da. And she was very hyper vigilant. She had the same look as the Canadian health minister. Some of you know who I'm talking about. She had the exact same look in every way. Okay. She had long hair with a bald spot in the back. So what does that signify to you? Do women get bald spots in the back usually? So this person who was working the self-checkout was extremely vigilant, watching and noticing every single thing that was going on and almost like taking notes mentally. She was not a normal person that you would see in that position. Okay. Usually they're leaning up against the thing. They're kind of like out of it. They're talking amongst themselves. They're not paying attention. They're waiting for you to flag them down. You guys know what I'm talking about. So heads up, you guys, just heads up on this. Okay. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Be prayerful about where you are. Be prayerful about how you're preparing. Be prayerful, just be repentant and make sure that you are right and in right standing and walking and your garments are clean, right? So that's one thing that happened. And so the other thing that's been happening, I know we talked about last week, the Korah stuff happening with the uprising of people rejecting the chosen of Yah, right? So in the prophet portion, or in the Torah portion of Korah, Korah is speaking against Yah's anointed one, right? Moshe. And we also have been having this happen last week where there's groups and groups that are speaking against Yah's anointed one, Yeshua, right? And this is just on point. It happens every year. These cycles go through. This week, we're talking about the Red Heifer. This is the week that we read the Red Heifer, and it's also the week where we're heading into the timeline where the golden calf was worshipped. Okay? So I find this timeline extremely, extremely interesting. I'm really interested to see what unfolds in the next few weeks. So the golden calf date that apparently the people at Mount Sinai had worshipped the golden calf is Tammuz 17. Tammuz 17 will be July 23rd this year. So around that time, the 20th to 23rd will be around the time that the golden calf was worshipped, okay, for this year. So just heads up, you guys, just keep an eye out, be prayerful on, be prayerful on everything. And if you are walking close with Yah, his remnant who is walking with him very closely, he's going to guide and protect them. So you don't need to be in fear. You need to be in covenant, right? Don't be in fear, be in covenant. And if you have areas in your life where you need to get a handle on them, that you're willfully sinning, not that you're struggling because, not that you're struggling because life is really hard, but where you're willfully sinning, make sure that you are prayerful and getting delivered from that. Okay. Let's get into the Torah portion. We are at Chukat. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Statute. And it is derived from the second verse of the reading. This is the statute of the law, Torah, which Jehovah has commanded. Numbers 19:2. Chukat presents the mysterious laws of the Red Heifer ceremony for purification after contact with human death. This reading also contains the stories of Moshe striking the rock, the deaths of Aaron and Miriam, and the war with the Amorites. This portion concludes with the host of Israel encamping on the edge of the promised land. Very, very interesting timing. I just got Holy Spirit, very, very interesting timing with all that's going on in the world right now. So we're going to have a battle with the Amorites coming up here. Okay, so did you remember back in Genesis when Abraham was told that they'd be in captivity for 400 years and then they would be delivered, not because of anything that they did, but because the iniquity of the Amorites would be complete. The perversion, the perverse thinking, the absolute nonsense, twisted thinking of the Amorites is fully complete. They're fully perverted, right? That's what iniquity means, just perverse thinking. They're just fully out of it. And when the iniquity of the Amorites was complete, that is when the people would be delivered from Egypt, okay? So as things are unfolding and we look at the debauchery that happened last month, the month that everybody does a lot of debauchery, and you think about the things going on in the world and the things that are trying to take hold and the battle that's going on, there's a battle right now between good and evil. And I'm going to repeat this because I did talk about it a couple of weeks ago, but Yah told me a couple years ago, he said, be like the good spies, be like the good spies. So the good spies, what did they do? They understood and proclaimed that Yah is going to win. His people who are in covenant and faithful and not murmuring against him are going to head into the promised land. They're going to go into the promised land. He's going to destroy the giants. Okay. He's going to take out the giants. And what we need to do is trust him and understand that he's in control and he's going to take out the giants. Okay. The battle is going to happen. That battle of the Amorites is going to happen. And the people and his people are going to be called out, but he is going to destroy the giants. All right, let's pray and then let's get into the Torah portion. Numbers 19 is where we're going to start today. And we're going to go through the red heifer. And as we go through the red heifer, I want you to look at the symbols that are present and the different interaction of the symbols with each other, because it's really, really distinct and unique. And it doesn't really make sense. Like, why are we doing this? But it's very, if you understand the symbols and you understand what's the transfer that's happening, it shows a picture of Yeshua in a very deep, profound way. Okay, let's pray. Yehovah, thank you, Heavenly Father, for being with us today. We just glorify your name. We glorify your presence with us. And we just thank you that you accept our humble presence before you as we just seek your face on all of these things. We are so thankful for your mercy and your grace on us as we all fall short. We just glorify your name above all things, above all of creation. Your name we glorify. I just pray for the people, Father, that you'll give us eyes and ears to hear, that you will remove anyone from this broadcast that has ill intentions, that you block any witchcraft, that you cast down any curses in people's hearts and minds towards me or towards anyone on this broadcast. I pray, Father, for a healing of all infirmities on these people. I pray that you remove all toxins that have been placed in them through just the environments that we're in these days. I pray, Father, that your living water washes through us all, heals us completely, and restores us to the image of you. I pray, Father, that you just give us understanding of your word, give us peace, give us deliverance in every area of our lives. I want to pray over our friends and family, that they would know you, that we would be a good representation of you to them. I pray, Father, that you will deliver our friends and family, that they will start to see your truth. I pray for our children, Father, that they will always walk with you, that they will never veer to the right or to the left, that they will have razor sharp discernment at all times, that they will be able to recognize good from evil, and they will desire deeply to walk your path. I pray, Father, that you just give us your peace, your healing, remove all spirits of depression and anxiety from us. I pray, Father, that you heal us from all rejection, insecurity, anything that's got these people bound in their hearts and minds. I pray, Father, that you lift that off of them now. I pray, Father, for divine miracles in their lives, divine miracles of abundance. I pray that everyone's rent is paid. I pray, Father, that you unlock your abundance and your blessings for these people, that anywhere where they're in need, that they have a deeper understanding, that anywhere where they're in need, that they have a deeper provision, and that they trust you, that they trust your miracles, they trust your provision, they trust that you are above all of this, all that's going on in the world, that you are above it all. I pray against spirits of fear that are trying to lock the people into being afraid rather than watching and waiting for what you're going to do, how you're going to intercede, how you're going to deliver your people. Father, I pray that you give us a deep understanding that you are going to destroy the giants, and that you are going to take us into the land of milk and honey, the land of provision. And Father, as we enter the land, I pray, Father, that you always remind us how we got there, that we will never forget, that we will sing the song of Moses and the song of Yeshua, and that we will never, ever forget how we got there. In Yeshua's name, amen. Okay, Numbers 19, let's go.
Now the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded. tell the people of Israel to bring you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish, and on which a yoke has never come. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and it shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered before him. And Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, and sprinkle some of its blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. And the heifer shall be burned in his sight. Its skin, its flesh, and its blood with its dung shall be burned. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet yarn, and throw them into the fire, burning the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. But the priest shall be unclean until evening. The one who burns the heifer shall wash his clothes in water and bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean until evening. And a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and deposit them outside the camp in a clean place. And they shall be kept for the water for impurity for the congregation of the people of Israel. It is a sin offering. And the one who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. And this shall be a perpetual statute for the people of Israel, and for the stranger who sojourns among them.
Okay, this shall be a perpetual statute for the people of Israel and the stranger who sojourns among them. Just want to point out that there's always and often included the stranger that sojourns among them. So a lot of times when I talk about certain things in the short form videos, people get really divisive and they say, well, these things are only for Israel. This is only for Israel. It's the stranger who sojourns among him as well. So if you are someone who believes in the God of Israel, you have become a stranger who is sojourning among them. You don't have the land. You don't have inheritance in that way yet. Some are grafted in later when they're brought in. We see that in Isaiah 66. I won't get into that now. But the strangers who sojourn among them are living in the community. These things are for them as well.
Whoever touches the dead body of any person shall be unclean 7 days. He shall cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day, and so be clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day, he will not become clean. Whoever touches a dead person, the body of anyone who has died, and does not cleanse himself, defiles the tabernacle of the Lord, and that person shall be cut off from Israel. Because the water for impurity was not thrown on him, he shall be unclean. His uncleanness is still on him.
Okay, so much to kind of touch on here. So what is going on? Okay, so if you ever touched a dead body or touched a grave or come into contact with a dead body, that uncleanliness has come upon you, and you cannot enter the tabernacle until it's removed, okay? And so what they were doing, and this is the shadow picture of Yeshua, they were told to take the ashes of the red heifer and do this whole process so that they could have the ashes to make themselves clean. And they would do this, if you say you touched a dead body or whatever, you would do this on the 3rd day and the 7th day. Paul does this in Acts 21. Let's go to it. Acts 21. This is Paul going through, and he's doing his process to become clean from the dead. Let me just see where it starts. Okay, I'm going to start at Acts 15. I think that's kind of where it starts. Acts 21:15. After these days, we got ready and went up to Jerusalem. So this is Paul and the people with him. And some of the disciples from Caesarea went with us, bringing us to the house of Mnason in Cyprus, an early disciple with whom we should lodge. When we had come to Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. On the following day, Paul went with us to James, and all the elders were present. After greeting them, he related one by one all the things that Yah had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. And when they heard it, they glorified God. And they said to him, "You see, brother, that many thousands were among the Jews who have believed. They are all zealous for the law." Okay, so note this, that Paul is saying that these Gentiles and the Jews that were with them, the Gentiles that met Jehovah, are zealous for the law. And they have been told about you and all that, and about you that and they have been told about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children and walk according to our customs. Notice the word customs. It's not law there, it's customs. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. Do therefore what we tell you. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Take these men and purify yourself along with them and pay their expenses, so that they may shave their heads. Thus they will all know that there is nothing in what they have been told about you, that you yourself also live in observance to the law. So they're going to the temple to do the purification ceremony so that they can be pure to enter the temple, okay? They've been out on the road, they've been in contact with all sorts of things. So they're going to do that whole purification week, right? That's why you have that week there. Just like we just read in Numbers, it's a week-long process, right? As for the Gentiles who believed, we have sent a letter with our judgment that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols and from blood. So that's in regards to food. Okay, so when people come and say Jesus made all foods clean and stuff like this, they're in conflict with a lot of these verses. Their understanding is in conflict with a lot of these verses, because here we see, as in Acts 15, they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols and from blood. Okay, so that's food. That's a food command. Okay, and from what has been strangled and from sexual immorality. So the whole thing from Acts 15 is they were going to start with these commands, and they were going to start and learn them over time. Just like all of you have experienced, you started in a certain place. Most people start with the Sabbath, and then you start to learn. You learn the different commands as you go. And it takes a while, it takes many years of study to start to learn what the Torah says, right? Then Paul took the men, and the next day he purified himself along with them and went into the temple, giving notice when the days of purification would be fulfilled and the offering presented for each one of them. And when the 7 days were almost completed, okay, so he's doing the 7-day process, okay? We're gonna leave that there just because that's enough for our study today. So when we go back to Numbers 11, whoever touches the dead body of a person shall be unclean for 7 days. He shall cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day and the 7th day, and so be clean. So it's that 7-day process, okay? I'm not seeing it in here, but someone had mentioned that they had put the crimson worm color in the water of the ashes of the red heifer. So they had put the crimson worm, so that crimson worm would make the water a red color. And this is important to understand because if we look at this translation here, and they shall keep the water for impurity of the congregation of the people of Israel, it is a sin offering. If you go and you look that up in the Hebrew, so that's Numbers 19:9. If we look that up in the Hebrew, the word is, let's see if I can find this. uh, it's a different translation here. Sin offering. It's saying chata. Just look. Chata. Okay, so when I looked this before, I think I have to look in the actual Hebrew, just the Hebrew manuscript, just a second. This is the one thing I didn't look up before. Verse 19:9. It's really interesting that sometimes they don't match, like the Strongs sometimes doesn't totally match. Okay, 19:9. If you want to see my screen too, just jump on the Zoom call. There should be a link for it in my bio. Let's see here. Okay, it is the same word there. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, see, just a FYI, you guys, just a FYI, when you're looking up like Blue Letter Bible strong stuff, there's missing words all the time that you will miss context and stuff. So don't ever debate somebody on using just only Strongs, because sometimes you're actually missing words that are like, it's Strongs is a very minimal, like that Blue Letter Bible is like very basic level learning. Okay, that's like your first step. A lot of times you'll see people get really prideful, like, oh, I looked it up in Strongs, and they don't realize that there's missing words from there. There's missing context because it's a very simplified version. Okay. There's a lot of good that you can learn from Strongs and stuff, but just be aware that like it's not the full meal. It's like a snack. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let me show you guys this. Flip. Okay, so this is the same verse. So I looked it up in the regular and I couldn't see. Okay, this is what I looked, and I just want to show you this so that you can see. Like I'm looking at this and it's only giving me this word, okay? It's not giving me any other words. It's just giving me that word, okay? But when you look in the actual Hebrew manuscript, nida is there. Nida. So some of you will know what nida means, right? Nida is the menstruation impurity sin offering, okay? And it's the waters of impurity. It's the flow of impurity, okay? That's kind of the picture that's being presented in Hebrew. If you were to literally translate it, it would be, I wrote this down, the waters of menstruation, it is a purification. That's what this section means, nida chata. The waters of purification, the waters of menstruation, it is a purification, okay? And so what is this picture here? It's like, it's this picture of the deepest purifying, because that purifying goes back to the garden, right? Because when did the curse happen in the garden, right? It's that deep purification on all levels. And this is kind of a theme that goes throughout scripture, right? Your works are like dirty rags, right? We know where that rag thing comes from. And then you look at when Yeshua, the woman grabs at Yeshua's tzitzit, his garment, on the corners of the garment was the tzitzit, which was the command, the Torah. that represents the command of Torah. We went through this the last few weeks. So as that woman with the issue of blood grabs the tzitzits, she's instantly healed. That's that purification, right? So she, just by grasping onto Yeshua, instantly healed. And this is the picture that we're going to see with the red heifer all the way into our reading in the New Testament today. Because as we read in the New Testament, we're going to read about the water turning to wine. Okay. So yeah, we'll get into that. It'll make sense as we go. So we got this this picture of the waters of purification, okay, the water flowing of the purification. And the red heifer is that perfect sacrifice that's unblemished, never had a yoke on it, complete perfect sacrifice, right? And then as we go through this, we see these different symbols of the red heifer. So we see that Eleazar, the priest, the high priest, had to sacrifice the red heifer while being in a clean state. So he had to do a mikvah. He had to make sure he was in a perfectly clean state before he goes to sacrifice the red heifer. Now, the priest always had a higher standard of living, and the high priest had the highest standard of living, okay? They had to maintain a very high level of purification. Eleazar, the priest, became unclean as he sacrificed the red heifer. So as the high priest and the people involved in this whole ceremony with the red heifer, as they are doing this, they, as the priests, become unclean. They start off clean and they become unclean in the process. And so you can see that parallel with Yeshua. He was clean and perfect and sinless, but then through the process of what he did for us, he became unclean, right? Our impurities went on to him, okay? And then he goes into the depths of Sheol. So when we look at this, we also see the blood mixed with the water, right? And then we see, I heard that they put the crimson bug in the water too. I don't know if you guys know about the crimson bug. I have to double check that and find out if that was a Talmud thing or where that is, because I'm not seeing it in here. But they did put, they apparently, I'm not going to say for sure, but they did put the crimson worm, and you guys know the symbology of the crimson worm. If not, just look it up, in the water as well. And so the water would have had like a reddish hue to it as well, which is very, it's like a picture of that waters of purification. That's definitely a picture of that, okay? So then the red heifer is completely burned. And so what is burning? Burning is that sense of purification. We see burning linked with purification over and over in the scriptures. You see it with people going through the fire, right? The earth will be cleansed by fire, all of this stuff. So as Yeshua takes on the sin as our high priest and becomes unclean, he then goes down and is purified, right? It's like that purification process. So you can see kind of the shadow pictures. The sin is purified. He takes on the sin is purified from him. He takes it down to be purified. There's probably some very interesting things that go on that I don't understand, and I don't think any of us understand. Physically with that he was taking on all of our iniquities and then purifying them for us, taking the punishment for us, right? And so he goes down for 3 days. And do we know much about what happened down there? No, we don't really know, right? Okay, so then the priest shall wash his clothes and bathe his body, and afterward he may come into the camp. So he becomes unclean from this process, just like Yeshua became unclean from this process, right? I think that's all I wanted to cover in there. The one who gathers the ashes of the red heifer shall wash his clothes and become unclean. Anyone who touches, so these ashes, anyone involved in the process becomes unclean. But when the process is complete, this is the water that makes people clean. I don't know if you guys can see the parallels there, but it's quite profound. So this water that they're going to have after these ashes these ashes are going to make other people clean, but they made everybody who was involved in their production unclean. Yeah. I think we're on verse 14.
This is the law when someone dies in a tent. Everyone who comes into the tent and everyone who is in the tent shall be unclean 7 days. And every open vessel that has no cover fastened on it is unclean. Whoever in the open field touches someone who was killed with a sword, or who died naturally, or touches a human bone or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. For the unclean they shall take some ashes of the burnt sin offering, and fresh water shall be added in a vessel. Then a clean person shall take hyssop, and dip it in the water, and sprinkle it on the tent, and on all the furnishings, and on the persons who were there, and on whoever touched the bone, or the slain, or the dead, or the grave. And the clean person shall sprinkle it on the unclean on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day. Thus on the 7th day he shall cleanse him, and he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and at evening he shall be clean. If the man who is unclean does not cleanse himself, that person shall be cut off from the midst of the assembly, since he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. Because the water for impurity has not been thrown on him, he is unclean. And it shall be a statute forever for them. The one who sprinkles the water for impurity shall wash his clothes, and the one who touches the water for impurity shall be unclean until evening. And whatever the unclean person touches shall be unclean, and anyone who touches it shall be unclean until evening. And the people.
Okay, so you have this picture of this water has been made now, and this water, they would sprinkle it on people to purify them after a death. So if anyone died in a tent or whatever, they would go in and sprinkle the water of the ashes, the water with the ashes of the red heifer. Now, side note, I heard from a friend of mine who is in contact with somebody who does a lot of work with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and apparently they have the ashes from the other heifers, because all of the ashes, bits of them were saved throughout the years, apparently, and they now have all the ashes in their possession. They have been discovered and found, and they have the ashes of all the previous red heifers, apparently, which is fascinating. I can't prove that, but I heard from a friend of a friend. Okay. I find it fascinating that, like I always say, watch the order of things. The order of this whole section is really, really important. But I really find it fascinating that we have this talk about the water, and then the death of Miriam happens right after. I don't understand that order and why that's injected in there, but I know there's probably a reason that that's injected in there. But let's just continue.
People of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the 1st month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Would that we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord. Why have you brought the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, that we should die here, both we and our cattle? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink." Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and fell on their faces. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them, and give drink to the congregation and their cattle." And Moses took the staff from before the Lord, as he commanded him. Then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock?" And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank and their livestock. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not believe in me to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, Therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah, where the people of Israel quarreled with the Lord, and through them he showed himself holy.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. This is the second time that Moses has to get water from a rock, right? So the first time is found in Deuteronomy 33:8. Let's go there. So the first time this happened, the people were grumbling because they didn't have water. And Moshe was told to strike the rock, if I recall correctly. Okay, Deuteronomy. Oh no, that's a different one. I'll have to look it up. Just a sec. Da, 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 da. Maybe if I look up the name of it. Massa. Exodus 17. There we go. The Google is not strong with me today. Exodus 17. So this is the first time that Moses strikes the rock. Now, notice the pictures that are happening, okay? The congregation of Israel moved on from the wilderness of Sin by stages according to the commandment of Jehovah, and they camped at Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore, the people quarreled with Moshe and said, "Give us water to drink." And Moshe said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test Jehovah?" And then the people there thirsted for water, and the people grumbled against Moshe and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt and kill us and kill our livestock and our children with thirst?" So Moshe cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me." And Jehovah said to Moses, "Pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff in which you struck the Nile, and go, behold, I will stand before you on the rock at Oreb, and you shall strike the rock, and the water shall come out of it, and the people will drink." And so Moshe did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the name of the place Massa and Meribah, because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, because they had tested Jehovah by saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" So I believe that those two words mean like the grumbling or the speaking against. So this time in Exodus, he's told to strike the rock, and then the rock splits in two. And so there's images of the rock that people have found in the Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia that people believe is, people believe is the actual rock that he split. Now, I want to just point out to you this imagery, okay? So this is the rock that most people believe is the actual rock that Moshe split, and out of it came the water for the first time, okay? This is the first rock that he struck, and he was told to strike. Look how it becomes two tablets, okay? Right after this in Exodus, so first the water comes out and the people, but then right after this, he's given the two tablets, okay? In which the commandments, the 10 commandments are written on these two tablets, okay? So that's a really interesting picture. So here's the first rock and it's split, they got the two tablets, okay? Now, in the second time that the people are grumbling, he's told to speak to the rock. And as he speaks to the rock, the water is supposed to come out. So he's no longer supposed to strike it. He's supposed to speak to it and the water will flow. Okay. And you see the instruction. The instruction is take the staff, assemble the congregation, you and Aaron, your brother, and tell the rock, before their eyes to yield its water, so that you shall bring water out of the rock for them and give drink to the congregation and their cattle. And Moshe took the staff before Jehovah as he commanded him. So you can see that the instruction is very different this time around. And they have gone now, they've learned the 10 commandments. They've been at Mount Sinai. They've been walking in the wilderness, learning the commandments. And now they're going to be heading into the land. Okay. We're at verse 10. So Moshe strikes the rock.
Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom.
I already read that. Okay, so you can hear in Moses's words that he's frustrated. So a lot of people wonder, well, why didn't he get to enter the land? Because he didn't listen to what Jehovah commanded. He did it his own way instead of humbling himself and just listening to the clear instructions. Okay, he didn't listen to the clear instructions. And Moshe and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock, and he said, "Hear now, you rebels, shall we?" He took credit. Shall we bring water out for you of this rock? So he's taking credit, right? Shall we do it? And Moshe lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. So he didn't just do it once. He did it twice. Okay. And the water came out abundantly. So Jehovah still gave the people the water, and the congregation drank and their livestock. But Jehovah said to Moshe and Aaron, because you did not believe me and uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, as set apart, as unique in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I've given them. So they lost their ability to bring the people into the land. Okay. That's why you have to be really, really careful if Jehovah has given you an instruction that you are doing it in the way that he asks you to do it. Especially when you're leading other people. And this is why I find TikTok really difficult right now, is because there's so many people on TikTok and YouTube that do not understand the danger of leading other people in any way, right? Like it should be a fear of and a reverence of Yah thing. And they're just haphazardly spitting out videos sometimes. And points of view and just like random squirrel thoughts that go through. And I've done it too. That go through their mind. But the more you read this and the more you go through it, the more you understand that you have to be incredibly careful to be looking at his instruction and humbling yourself before his instructions, right? So many conversations are had where people are arguing back and forth. And as people are debating, the pride goes up, And you can see when pride takes over is when it starts to be about being right rather than seeking and relating to the word, right? And relating to what the word is saying. So here we see, these are the waters of Meribah where the people of Israel quarreled with Jehovah, and though he had shown himself holy. So quarreling with Jehovah, we see this over and over and over in Numbers. That's why I love Numbers so much. And I love the Torah so much, because you could see the people quarreling with Jehovah. And we see this today. People quarrel with Jehovah all day long. Instead of just keeping his basic instructions and understanding like, okay, he said it, let's just do it. Like, if he said it, just do it, right? Arguing, finding loopholes, not being able to just keep it simple. Like, just keep it simple. Just do as he asked you to do to the best of your ability. Why argue with him and try to find loopholes, right? Why use Paul to try to find loopholes? Did Yah really say? Yes, Yah really said. Did he really say? Did he really say, right? Let's move on. We're going to go to, they're going to start heading through Edom. So if you remember Edom, Edom is Esau's descendants, okay? Esau ended up having a great big kingdom. That kingdom was Eden. Or not Eden, Edom. So Edom, the Edomites are Esau's descendants, okay? And Esau's descendants are the ones who sold their birthright for a bowl of lentil stew, okay? And you see this kind of, this mentality of wanting, within the Edomites, up even until this day, you see this mentality of wanting now, wanting the pleasures and the good things and the, you know, feeding your hungers now, rather than wanting the heritage and the promise and the heritage of Jacob. Now, Brother Judah said, Brother Judah believes that the Edomites are the Romans. Okay, I tend to agree that the Edomites are the Romans. And you see this in Roman Vatican culture. You see this wanting the things of the flesh now, rather than wanting the heritage of Jacob, wanting to do things their own way. They make their own holy water. Instead of understanding and learning the red heifer and how the red heifer purifies us, etc., they make their own holy water, right? They do everything their own twisted way, and they don't want the heritage of Jacob. They want to do it their own way, right? And that goes all the way back to Esau. So let's go into this. Edom refuses passage. So the people are going to go through the Edomites' kingdom. They just want to pass through.
Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the hardship that we have met, how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we lived in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians dealt harshly with us and our fathers. And when we cried to the Lord, he heard our voice and sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. And here we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your territory. Please let us pass through your land. We will not pass through field or vineyard or drink water from a well. We will go along the king's highway. We will not turn aside to the right hand or to the left until we have passed through your territory. But Edom said to him, you shall not pass through, lest I come out with the sword against you. And the people of Israel said to him, we will go up by the highway, and if we drink of your water, I and my livestock, then I will pay for it. Let me only pass through on foot, nothing more. But he said, you shall not pass through. And Edom came out against them with a large army and with a strong force. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his territory. So Israel turned away from him. And they journeyed from Kadesh, and the people of Israel, the whole congregation, came to Mount Hor. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor, on the border of the land of Edom, let Aaron be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land that I have given to the people of Israel, because you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall be gathered to his people, and shall die there. Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they went up Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation, and Moses stripped Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, and when all the congregation saw that Aaron had perished, all the house of Israel wept for Aaron 30 days. When the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming by the way of Atharim, he fought against Israel and took some of them captive. And Israel vowed a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed give this people into my hand, then I will devote their cities to destruction. And the Lord heeded the voice of Israel and gave over the Canaanites, and they devoted them and their cities to destruction. So the name of the place was called Hormah. From Mount Hor they set out by the way to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the people became impatient on the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food. Then the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people so that many people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people, and the Lord said to Moses, Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live. So Moses made a bronze serpent and set it on a pole, and if a serpent bit anyone, he would look at the bronze serpent and live.
Okay, so hopefully you guys are catching all the amazing shadow pictures here. Definitely something to meditate on, how they're going through the different lands and trying to get to, and they're fighting all these different battles to try to get to where they need to be. This is a really good indication too, that you know that these things are not written in chronological order all the time, because you see that Aaron dies and his cloak, which is his priesthood, his anointing, his mantle, when he gives the garments to Eleazar's son. So when you see them pass on garments, it's a picture of them passing on the priesthood, passing on the anointing and the job that they were doing, right? But when we read in the Red Heifer earlier in the chapter, at the beginning of this chapter, we could see that Eleazar was the one that was told to do the Red Heifer sacrifice. So we know that these things are not in chronological order. And so why have they been put in this order? I find watching the order of things really, really interesting. I'm not sure exactly why it's been put in this order, but it's very, very interesting. So there's a new priest anointed as they're heading into the land. Now, right before they head into the land, you have the bronze serpent. So this bronze serpent is a shadow picture of Yeshua on the cross. And if you just look up, you look up images of how people do it, it's really interesting because this is the symbol that the medical system uses often. And it's such an interesting choice, obviously, for them to use this symbol, because a lot of people look to the medical system for healing. They look to the medical system, the doctors, for all of these things, when we should be looking to Yeshua on the cross, that he paid it all and that he brought us back in to covenant, right? And that he heals us, right? And so the people were speaking against Yehovah. So catch this, the people are speaking against Yehovah. Again, they do it often, and speaking against his commands, and then they start to get bit by the serpents. The serpents don't just bite them randomly. It was after they were speaking against Yehovah. And because of that, they were dying and they were facing the judgment. They were dying and facing the judgment. So what did he give them? Look up upon this, right? Look up upon this, and then you'll be healed. He didn't say bow down and worship this. He didn't say always stay here at this cross and look up. He said, look at it, it's going to heal you, and then you're going to walk towards the land, okay? A lot of believers stay at the cross. They stay at the cross. Even in Rome, they keep Yeshua up on the cross, and they bow before the cross with Yeshua still up on it. That is not the point. The point is you look at it, you understand the cost of your sin, the cost of your rebellion. Why is Yeshua up on the cross and you're looking upon the one whom you pierced? We all have pierced him because we all have sinned. You're looking at him to be reminded and remember and understand the cost of sin, which is death, right? The cost of sin is death. So as you look upon the cross, you remember the cost of sin is death. And so do you go then and be lawless and sin more? No. You understand the cost of sin is death. I'm going to change my ways and walk into the land. So they're looking here, they're looking at the cross, and then next they're going to go into the land very soon, right? See the order? Now, a lot of people look up at the medical system, and we had this whole jabber jab thing that went down in 2020, and where so many people were putting their faith, their full faith in this jabber jab, right? And as they're putting their full faith in this jabber jab, they're looking to the government, they're looking to politicians, they're looking to doctors to heal them. And I don't know if you all watched that documentary about the snake venom that was in the reversatol or something like that. Apparently, it was connected to snake venom. I don't know for sure. I'm not a scientist, but it's all very, very interesting how these symbols very specifically played out during 2020. And a lot of people woke up in 2020 and realized that there's bigger things at play that we've all kind of been asleep to, and people were elevated to new understandings in this process. So this symbol is to show you how to understand the cross in a very simple way. You look up, you understand that your sin causes death, it causes the problem, right? And you understand the cost of sin. Yeshua dies on the cross. He goes through that horrible, horrible death. You understand the cost. And then you remember that. And then you walk forward. You understand that you're going to be healed. And you walk forward into the promised land. And you walk forward into the promised land, not rebelling anymore. What got them into that position in the first place? Why did they get the snake bites in the first place? Rebellion. Speaking against the word of Jehovah. So when a Christian or a regular Christian of a different denomination or different denominations comes to you and says, Yeshua paid it all, we are forgiven, we can live free. That doesn't mean live free, doesn't mean we live in sin and we walk in sin. We are free from the curse of sin and death. That's what we're free from. If you continue to sin, the curse will come back upon you. We all know that. If I went out today and went and did a bunch of drugs, I would have a curse in some way come upon me, whether health-wise, whatever. It's just logical thinking as well, right? Okay. What is next? Let's move on. Oh, actually, I want to show you. So at first, this is allowed. The bronze serpent is allowed to show them that this is the cost of sin. It was a tool to teach them. It was a tool to help their human brains understand. Later on, they started to worship the bronze serpent. We can look at that in 2 Kings 2:18. Let's go there. We'll go to 18:1. In the third year of Hoshea, the son of Eliah, the king of Israel, Hezekiah, the son of Achaz, and the son of Judah began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did what was done, and he did what was right in the eyes of Jehovah, according to all that David, his father, had done. So he's walking righteously. He removed the high places and broke the pillars and cut down the Asherah. So the Asherah is the poles, the trees and the decorated trees and the poles that they would put on the mountaintops, and they would worship under the trees by bringing gifts and placing them around the trees. There's stone etchings of this process. And so they would have these Asherah trees that they would decorate, and they would put decorations on and bring gifts to. Yeah. He broke into pieces the bronze serpent that Moshe had made, for until those days, the people of Israel had made offerings to it. It was called Nashatan. Neshatan. So look at that. Bronze viper. Neshatan, bronze viper. They had made offerings to it. He trusted in Jehovah, the El of Israel, so that there was none like him among all the kings of Judah after him, nor among those who were before him. So they held fast for he held fast to Jehovah. He did not depart from following him, but kept the commandments that Jehovah had commanded Moshe. And Jehovah was with him wherever he went. He prospered. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and would not serve him. He struck down the Philistines as far as Gaza and its territory, from watchtower to fortified city. I want to show you something cool in the Hebrew. So this bronze serpent is a play on words in Hebrew. So bronze serpent, right? Bronze serpent. Now, if we look at bronze, it's nishit, and then nakash. Nishit, nakash. You can see the similarities, and if you just even look at the Hebrew letters, the similarities there, right? Just look at the bottom for those of you who are on the Zoom. So couple letters difference. Now, if we look at what a serpent is, in biting, in spite of charm, an oppressor, ungodly, effect of wine. Oh, that's interesting. Effect of wine. As hissing, as eating dust, a crafty temper, a crafty tempter. What does bronze mean? Hardened with alloy. It's really interesting because there's verses too that talk about like making the heavens like bronze. When you're disobedient and you're rebellious, he will make the heavens like bronze before you. Anyway, just an interesting little side note. That the two words are, I don't know if they're from the same root or, let me see. Not getting the root here on this. Yeah. So this one is bronze. And the root word is copper. So bronze, the root word is copper. I think they are mixed together to make each other, right? From the root of nahas. So interesting enough, nahas. So the bronze serpent, so the serpent is nakash, and the root word of that is to practice divination, to interpret omens and signs. To practice divinations, to interpret omens and signs. And the root of that is sorcery, magic spell, curse, and whisper together, to charm and enchant. So whispering together, charming and enchanting, practicing sorcery and magic, mixing those two together becomes nahas, which is to practice divination, to interpret omens and signs. So that's like when people do the tarot cards and they're like, oh, I pulled this card and did this, blah, blah, blah. And then they interpret that for your life or whatever, and they speak that out to you. So they're whispering the magic spell and curse as they interpret the omens and the signs. Yeah. And that is, those things all together create the word for the snake, the serpent, the viper. Fascinating. And you'll remember that all rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. All rebellion, I think that's in Ecclesiastes. Google it. First Samuel 15:23. For rebellion is the sin of witchcraft. All rebellion is a sin of witchcraft. Do you believe what Jehovah is saying, or are you speaking against it? And that's what the people are doing. And what happens? The serpents come and start to bite them. And then they have to look up at the cost, which is the serpents biting. They look up at the cost, and then they are healed. And then they walk forward into the land. For all rebellion is a sin of witchcraft. To break the word of Jehovah is iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of Jehovah, he will also, what's the end of it? He hath also rejected thee from being king. So I think this is when Saul is rejected from. Let's just check. Yeah. So this is when Saul is rejected, because Saul went to the psychic lady, the witchcraft lady. And Saul said unto Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of Jehovah and thy words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Therefore, I pray thee, pardon my sin and turn away from me, that I may worship Jehovah. And Samuel said unto Saul, I will not return with thee, for thou hast rejected the word of Jehovah, and Jehovah hath rejected thee from being king over Israel. So that was that for Saul, because he rejected the word of Jehovah. One thing I notice about scripture all the time is that the higher the position, the less wiggle room you get. So when you see like Moshe had very little wiggle room at the end, because as he was elevated in position to lead the people, very little wiggle room. It's that picture of the more you know, the more you're responsible for. The more you understand, the more you're responsible for behaving correctly. So if Saul was in this position, and so there was no grace, there was no turning back for him. He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing, and that he was not supposed to do it. He knew the Torah. He understood the Torah. But for those who don't understand the Torah, they don't understand everything yet, or they're just learning, or those people that are just new, there's much more grace because they're learning and they're walking. That's why you see in Acts 15, the commandments for the new converts, they're not supposed to learn them all in a day. They learn the little pieces. They learn on the Sabbath. They start to keep the Sabbath. They start to not eat food offered to idols. They start to slowly learn on the Sabbath and grow in their walk. They're not leading people, but those who are starting to lead people, and they're much more accountable. They have much less grace, and judgment comes upon them. If they walk in rebellion, judgment comes upon them much faster. Okay, the Song of the Well. Let's move on. We're in Numbers 19 or Numbers 20:10. Numbers 20:10.
And the people of Israel set out and camped in Oboth. And they set out from Oboth and camped at Ayahabarim in the wilderness that is opposite Moab, toward the sunrise. From there they set out and camped in the valley of Zered. From there they set out and camped on the other side of the Arnon, which is in the wilderness that extends from the border of the Amorites, for the Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Therefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, Wahab and Suphah, and the valleys of the Arnon, and the slope of the valleys that extends to the seat of Ar, and leans to the border of Moab. And from there they continued to Beer, that is the well of which the Lord said to Moses, Gather the people together, so that I may give them water. Then Israel sang this song, Spring up, O well, sing to it, the well that the princes made, that the nobles of the people dug, with the scepter and with their staffs. And from the wilderness they went on to Mattanah, and from Mattanah to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamoth, and from Bamoth to the valley lying in the region of Moab, by the top of Pisgah that looks down on the desert.
Okay, there's so many side quests I want to go on here right now, but I'm not going to do it because we'll be here all day. But I'm very curious if anyone has read the Book of the Wars of Yehovah, if anybody has read that or found that. That could be something we should look into. Because they're quoting the Book of the Wars of Yehovah here. So I'm imagining that's a document that lays out all the different battles. And then the second side quest, we're going to go on this side quest. I find it fascinating that they continue to beer, which is the well in which Yehovah said to Moshe, gather the people together so that I may give them water. What does beer mean? Just a curiosity, what does beer mean in Hebrew? I've never noticed that place before. Beer. Just curiosity. Make distinct plane of letters on tablets. Make distinct plane of letters on tablets. So it's like almost like a picture of clarity. They continue to bear the well, which Yehovah said to Moses, gather the people together that I may give them water. And that name of that place means to give them plain writing letters on tablets. Really interesting. Okay, let's go back. I just need to take a quick little break. Okay, moving on, we're at verse 21. Numbers 20, verse 21.
Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, let me pass through your land. We will not turn aside into field or vineyard. We will not drink the water of a well. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed through your territory. But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. He gathered all his people together and went out against Israel to the wilderness and came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. And Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as to the Ammonites, for the border of the Ammonites was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel settled in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon and in all its villages. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and taken all his land out of his hand, as far as the Arnon. Therefore the ballad singers say, come to Heshbon, let it be built. Let the city of Sihon be established. For fire came out from Heshbon, flame from the city of Sihon. It devoured Ar of Moab, and swallowed the heights of the Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You are undone, O people of Chemosh. He has made his sons fugitives, and his daughters captives, to an Amorite king, Sihon. So we overthrew them. Heshbon as far as Dibon perished, and we laid waste as far as Nophah. Fire spread as far as Meribah.
Okay, so quiz time. Who are the Moabites? Moabites are the descendants of Lot, right? Lot and his daughters. He is responsible for the Moabites and the Amorites, right? Yeah, Moabites and Amorites are the sons of are the descendants of Lot. Okay, so the Moabites were in this territory, and then the Amorites took over the territory. So who are the Amorites? What was happening in Genesis? The iniquity of the Amorites had to be complete. So when the iniquity of the Amorites would be complete, then the Amorites they're booted out of the land, right? Same group, the Amorites. The Moabites worshipped Chemosh, something like that. And if you look up, so the Amorites and the Moabites, their territory was to the east of Mount Nebo and Sukkoth. And they worshipped, even though they're both descendants of Lot, their tribes are both descendants of Lot, they worshipped different gods. So the Amorites worshipped this one, Chemosh. So you can just look this up yourself. Amorites worshipped Shemosh. How did they worship him? Probably the same as they all did. They did child sacrifice and all of that. Bronze Age period. So they're looking at 2300 BC. Now, and then we look at the god of the Moabites, which is this one, Milcom. This is the god of the Moabites, Milcom. So they ended up having a different kind of national god that they worshipped. Just interesting. For interest's sake. So now we see the people going through and going to war. So you could see the people are trying to get to the land, and they're having to go to battle with all of these different groups in order to get to the land. First the Edomites, and then it goes on and on and on. Next, we're going to go to King Og.
Thus Israel lived in the land of the Amorites, and Moses sent to spy out Jazer, and they captured its villages and dispossessed the Amorites who were there. Then they turned and went up by the way to Bashan. And Og the king of Bashan came out against them, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. But the Lord said to Moses, "Do not fear him, for I have given him into your hand, and all his people and his land. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon." So they defeated him and his sons and all his people, until he had no survivor left, and they possessed his land. Then the people of Israel set out and camped in the plains of Moab, beyond the Jordan at Jericho.
Okay, this will take us into next week, where we're going to go into Balak and Balaam, which is a very interesting section, but we won't get into that today. That'll be next week, Balak and Balaam. Balak and Balaam is mentioned in the New Testament in the book of Revelation. It's a really important understanding to have, especially in these times that we're in. So notice that, okay, so let's just do a recap of this entire section of these two chapters. You have this picture of the red heifer purifying the people, that ceremony, purifying the people. And then you have this picture of going to all these battles, right? They're going against all these other nations as they're fighting to get to the land. They know where they're going. They're fighting to get there, and they're having to go around all these different ways because all of these different armies are coming against them. Now, what did we have a few weeks ago when we're talking about the good and the bad spies? The good spies were saying, don't worry about it. Abba's going to take down the giants. You just have to be in covenant, keep his commandments, and he's going to take down the giants and protect you. The bad spies are saying, these kingdoms are too great for us. We can't acquire this land because these kingdoms are going to rule over us. They're going to defeat us, and they are weakening the hearts of the people towards Jehovah. It's that witchcraft. So when people are speaking all this fear and Jehovah's not going to keep his word, it's a form of witchcraft. It's murmuring against Jehovah. Jehovah has the authority and ability to do all things, and he has the authority and ability to defeat all these kingdoms so that his people can enter a land of milk and honey. And so when the people, so over and over and over again, the people are murmuring against Jehovah, murmuring against his commandments, murmuring against his anointed one, Moshe, murmuring. It's just like this whole story is them just walking in rebellion. And Jehovah's grace to them, his mercy to them, is he still brings them through. There are people lost along the way, just as we see in our walk today. There's people lost along the way. There's people defeated along the way. They go back into the world. They go back into the nations. They murmur against Jehovah's anointed one, and they are just taken out they're spit out of the camp, so to speak. We see this today. We see the same thing today. And it comes down to that, like, watch your mouth, watch your mouth on things. What are you believing in? Are you believing in the plan of the enemy? Are you believing in the plan of Yah, which is to bring his people into a promised land, into a kingdom, to establish his kingdom? And so then they look up at the cross with the brazen serpent. They recognize the cost of their murmuring and their rebellion. And then they carry on in the battle. Okay. After this moment with the cross and more battles, we're going to have Balak and Balaam. Now, Balak and Balaam is going to explain a lot of Christianity to you. A lot of the issues of Christianity is explained in understanding the stumbling block of Balak and Balaam. A lot of the issues are cleared up there. And once you see this and you understand this, a lot of things will make a lot more sense. Let's move on to Judges, though. We're going to go to Judges 11, 1. This is going to be the same area of territory that they were just battling through too, as well, with this. Judges 11, 1.
Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute. Gilead was the father of Jephthah. And Gilead's wife also bore him sons. And when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, "You shall not have an inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob, and worthless fellows collected around Jephthah and went out with him. After a time, the Ammonites made war against Israel. And when the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Jephthah from the land of Tob. And they said to Jephthah, "Come and be our leader, that we may fight against the Ammonites." But Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "Did you not hate me and drive me out of my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress?" And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "That is why we have turned to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the Ammonites and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "If you bring me home again to fight against the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them over to me, I will be your head." And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "The Lord will be witness between us if we do not do as you say." So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and leader over them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said, "What do you have against me, that you have come to me to fight against my land?" And the king of the Ammonites answered the messengers of Jephthah, "Because Israel, on coming up from Egypt, took away my land, from the Arnon to the Jabbok and to the Jordan. Now therefore restore it peaceably." Jephthah again sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said to him, "Thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites, but when they came up from Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and came to Kadesh." Israel then sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, "Please let us pass through your land." But the king of Edom would not listen. And they sent also to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. So Israel remained at Kadesh. Then they journeyed through the wilderness and went around the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and arrived on the east side of the land of Moab, and camped on the other side of the Arnon. But they did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was the boundary of Moab. Israel then sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, king of Heshbon. And Israel said to him, "Please let us pass through your land to our country." But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. So Sihon gathered all his people together and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. And the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they defeated them. So Israel took possession of all the land of the Amorites who inhabited that country. And they took possession of all the territory of the Amorites from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and from the wilderness to the Jordan. So then the Lord, the God of Israel, dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. And are you to take possession of them? Will you not possess what Chemosh your God gives you to possess? And all that the Lord our God has dispossessed before us, we will possess. Now are you any better than Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever contend against Israel, or did he ever go to war with them? While Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and in Aurora and its villages, and in all the cities that are on the banks of the Arnon 300 years, why did you not deliver them within that time? I therefore have not sinned against you, and you do me wrong by making war on me. The Lord, the judge, decide this day between the people of Israel and the people of Ammon. But the king of the Ammonites did not listen to the words of Jephthah that he sent to him. Then the Spirit of the Lord was upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and passed on to Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he passed on to the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will give the Ammonites into my hand, then whatever comes out from the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. So Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord gave them into his hand. And he struck them from Aurora to the neighborhood of Minnith 20 cities, and as far as Abel Keramim, with a great blow. So the Ammonites were subdued before the people of Israel.
Okay, so some of you know the rest of the story and some of you don't, but we're going to carry on and read the rest. First, I just want to cover the first part. So what is happening here? Time has passed. I believe it was, did I write down how much time has passed? No, I didn't write it down. So time has passed, and now there's a new battle for this land going on. And what Jephthah is doing, Jephthah is talking and telling the king about the past history that we've just gone through in the Torah portion. So we went through the past history in the Torah portion in Numbers, and now later on, Jephthah is retelling this past history to the king of the Ammonites, because the king of Ammonites is saying, you know, this is our land. We're trying to, and he's like, no, this was Moab's land, actually. So he's just clarifying that with him. It's really interesting to look at where this territory is today. Ammon today is in the East Bank. It's the capital of Jordan. So if you look today, here is the position of it. It's the same battle for the same land, you guys. It's like this battle for this land. So this is West Bank, kind of around here, and then this is Jordan. This battle for this land has kind of been ongoing. There's Mount Nebo, right? Mount Nebo is where Moshe dies before, because he's not allowed to enter into the land and cross and enter into this land. But this right here, I think it's, let's just look up. So yeah, West Bank is right here. So, okay, so there's Jerusalem, right? Ammon is up over here somewhere. I don't know why it's not showing up, because it's a pretty major. There it is. Okay. So here is all the territory of the West Bank. Okay. This is where all the issues, and this is where all the issues kind of, down here is where the issues kind of go. Right. And so even in this conversation that we have now today in our modern times, we're still having this battle play out. This right here is where these battles that we're reading right now, this is the land of the Moabites and the Amorites. This is their land, and then the Amalekites and them were battling. Okay, so the Amalekites were here, and then the Moabites and the Amorites took it over, the descendants of Lot, and then there's more battling going on, and then they, you know, they're still to this day battling over this stuff over here, right? There's not battling for this stuff right now going on, but there's battling for all this, which is very interesting. And so we have this historical record of all these things that were happening at that time. So let's look at, I think I had the map. Oh, I might have closed it. There it is. Okay, so here's this battle that is going on right now that we're reading about. Okay, here's Sukkoth. Here's the Jordan River. Here's the Dead Sea. There's Mount Nebo. Oh, sorry. There's Mount Nebo. Okay, Sukkoth, Dead Sea, Mount Nebo. Moshe dies here. Okay, this is the battles that they are going through. This is what was being described here. So this is where Ammon was. Okay, same area. This is now where the city, about where the city is. This is Gilead here. And then, so after that, he makes a vow. And vows are really interesting. You don't ever want to make a vow. You want to be very careful about vows you make, because Jehovah will collect on any vows that you make. That's why Yeshua says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't make a vow beyond that, because it's very dangerous to make a vow. So what does Jephthah do? He makes a vow that whoever comes out of the doors of his house to meet him when he returns shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. He was not required to do this. This is something that he did above and beyond. He was not asked to do this. This was not a commandment that he had to do. This was not something that was asked of him. But he took his own initiative and made this vow. I find it very fascinating because in Mormonism, in Catholicism, I don't know about Islam. I don't know that much about Islam. In these different sects and religions, they often create these extra vows. Mormonism is well known for all these extra vows. We went through a lot of this last week. So if you didn't catch last week, you can find it on the discipleship training. It's called Korah, or you can find it on YouTube. It's called Korah. We went through a lot of the vows and how those vows stick to you. So if you are making all these extra vows, the Masons do it too. The Masons are notorious for this. That vow will be required of you or required of your bloodline. You are making a covenant agreement. And that's what a lot of these religions do. And they get people in such bondage because people haven't realized that these vows are binding. You're making legal agreements before Jehovah. You are vowing before Jehovah. And these legal agreements are in place, and you have to either break them off through being born again through Yeshua and applying the blood of Yeshua to them to break them off, or they will just continue to operate. And we went through this last week, so I won't go through it again. If you want to see that, it's in the discipleship training. It's called Korah, and it's on YouTube. It's called Korah. It's last week's study. Let's read the rest of this. So these Torah portions come from Judaism. For the most part, we add on the messianic portion of them, but a lot of times they'll cut them off to end on a positive note rather than ending on a negative note, and rather than finishing. But we are tough cookies around here, so we don't need to cut them off. We can read the whole truth, nothing but the truth. We don't have to cut it off. You guys can handle it. You can handle the bad news that he made this vow and he's going to have to pay for it. What Judges 11? So let's go to Judges 11. Okay, so he's just made the vow. and now he's heading home. Judges 11:34. And Jephthah came to his home at Mizpah, and behold, his daughter came out to meet him with tambourines and with dances. She was his only child, and besides her, he had no son or daughter. And as soon as he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very, very, very low. You have become the cause of great trouble for me. For I have opened my mouth to Jehovah, and I cannot take back my vow. And she said to him, My father, you have opened your mouth to Jehovah. Do to me according what has gone out of your mouth. Now that Jehovah has avenged you on your enemies, on the Amorites. And so she said to her father, Let this thing be done for me. Leave me alone for 2 months, that I may go down unto the mountains and weep for my virginity, I and my companions. So that he said, Go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she departed, and her companions, and they wept for her virginity on the mountains, meaning that she would never bring forth children. So why are they weeping? Because she's never going to bring forth children, because she's going to die. At the end of the 2 months, she returned to her father, who did to her according to the vow that he had made. She had never known a man, and it had been custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went by year to year to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gilead 4 days in the year. So just a really crazy, sad story that he made this vow, and the vows, and this is interesting because it's a picture of too the vows that the fathers make end up on the children in many distinct ways. And so we know this if you've gone through understanding the vows in masonry and stuff, that how that passes down the bloodline and it affects the children on and on and on, affects the children until somebody comes in and starts dismantling those things. And a lot of you that study with me are the people that have been dismantling those things. So good for you, because I know it's not easy to be the one that breaks these vows off. So why did he decide to do this? My theory is he decided to make that vow because he was zealous, and also because he'd been out mixing with the Canaanites and all these different religions, and seeing the different religions and stuff, and kind of, I find this when you're instead of studying the Torah, if you're out studying other things all the time, confusion creeps in. And so if you're studying all this other stuff, even if you're just studying it for interest's sake and you're not applying it to your life, instead of studying the Torah and the commandments, often this kind of confused thinking gets in. We see this in the church all the time because they're mixing all of these things that they don't have the clear path ahead of them. And it's the Torah, the commands, and Yeshua that light your path ahead of you. And if you are over here studying this and over there studying this and looking at this and looking at that, looking at this tradition over here, looking at that tradition over there, your path is not lit as clear. And you can get confused and waver, and you might bring some of that in, that mixing in, and that mixing will often cause issues that you are not expecting. And I think you all know how quickly you can trip up. Like you can trip up so quickly. It happens to me quite often, where if I'm not paying attention and asking myself, okay, what is the commandment in regards to this? I can sometimes get tripped up, right? That's why we do this every week, so that it's ingrained in us, so we understand the patterns. And once you understand the patterns, you recognize, okay, this pattern's happening. This pattern's happening. We're in this Torah portion and this pattern's happening again. Oh, interesting. And it'll really refine your walk because you'll notice these things. Okay, let's move to the New Testament. The New Testament is John today, John 2, and this is going to be, so we started off this Torah portion with the red heifer and how the red heifer water purified the people. And now we're going to have this picture of the wedding at Cana in Galilee, where Yeshua turns the ritual purification waters of the Jews into wine. Okay. Let's read it first. We're at John 2.
On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water, now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there for a few days.
So yeah, very interesting picture. Such a strange conversation. Like, this is the conversation. They have no wine. And Yeshua said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." And his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Such a strange, disjointed conversation, don't you think? Like, I feel like we're missing something there. There's like a few sentences missing in this recording of this conversation. So they had so what is the symbolic picture? So the Jewish rites of purification, they had the water in there for all the rites of purification, and then he's going to turn that water into wine. Wine is a symbol of the crushed grapes, which is a symbol of blood. So you can see kind of how this connects with the red heifer sacrifice. It's that, the red heifer water was apparently red, from the crimson bugs that they put in, the crimson worms that they put in. I need to check that and confirm, though. Do check that. Don't repeat me on that. Just check it and confirm. I don't know how to confirm that. I believe it's probably it'll be in Josephus or in the Talmud or something like that. Oh, there's something from the Talmud I want to show you guys today. We'll do that in a second. So these rituals and these rites of purification, Yeshua was showing them that they were to lead to a greater understanding. So we also see that with the Jewish rites of purification, you also see the same theme with the eating of the bread. So they didn't wash their hands before the eating of the bread. That was a ritual purification thing. It was not a command of Yah. It was a ritual purification. And so they would take the water and pour it over their hands and recite a blessing, which was an added on oral tradition. Okay. And he wasn't speaking against the commands of Yah, he was speaking against oral traditions. Now we also have this picture here of the Jewish rites of purification, these 6 jars of these rites of purification. Why are these jars at this wedding? What is going on? Probably because in that oral tradition, people were having to do these rituals all the time. These are not commands of Yah. They're not commands in the Torah, right? Because this wedding is not the temple. They're not going into the temple. It's just a wedding. So a lot of times what these rituals were bringing the commands from the priesthood and the priesthood commands outside of the temple, and then placing them as ordinances upon the people, which was making life really difficult. And even when you look into these commands today and these purification rituals today, they just make life really complicated a lot of times, and they become a heavy yoke, right, on the people. And so he gets them to fill up the jars with water, and then he turns that water into wine. And the wine is a picture of the covenant. It's a picture of your soul, because the wine is like the picture of the blood, the crushed grapes. So crushed grapes is a picture of you've been crushed. Your flesh has been crushed and pressed, and the blood has poured out, right? Your blood is what you walk through life and do life with. So if you have blood pumping through your body, life is in the blood, right? That's what you're doing life with. That's what your soul is walking out life with. Okay. Whatever your body is doing, your heart, your mind, the things that your blood is flowing through you to do. That's a picture of your soul being poured out, right? So there's lots of interesting symbols here. What is also interesting is this comment of everyone serves the good wine first, and when the people are drunk, they have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine till now. So it's this picture of two, and this picture is repeated with the wineskins, that the wine is still good. So the Old Testament wine, the learning of the commands, the learning of the shadow pictures, they're still good things. They're still good to learn. But the wine that he's given us with this understanding of Yeshua dying and being rose up again, and this understanding of who Yeshua is, and this being able to walk with Yah and have that relationship with Yah directly, that's the good wine that he served later, right? It's kind of that picture that, and a lot of people say, oh, the old wine is bad. No, he says specifically the old wine is good when he goes, Luke 5:39. Luke 5:39. He also told them a parable. No one who tears a piece from a new garment puts it on an old garment, for if he does, he will tear the new, and the piece will not match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the new wine will burst the skins and it will be spilled, and the skins will be destroyed. But new wine must be put into fresh wineskins. And no one, after drinking old wine, desires the new. The old is good. What is the picture? The Jewish people, the people of that time, and this is the battle that Paul is going through constantly, trying to explain this to people, okay? They had all these things that were very beautiful and very profound, and they had this history, and they had drunk this wine for so long that they had become rigid, and kind of this was their understanding. It's the same thing that you find today when you find a Christian who's grown up in a certain theology, and they've learned this certain theology, and even though that theology is not in scripture, and you can point out how that theology is not actually in scripture, and you can point out the problems with the history and the context and things that they're learning, they can't adjust. They have a hard time adjusting because they have been fed a certain type of wine their whole life, and they think it's good and they think it's perfect the way that it is. So they don't want to change course and adjust. Okay. They're very stuck because they're not always learning and growing. And anyone gets stuck in anything if they're constantly thinking that they have it all figured out. And this is the biggest thing I find with people. If you think that you have it all figured out, if you think that you know it all, Abba can't show you anything. Yah cannot show you a single thing if you already have everything figured out, because you already got it figured out. How can he show you anything? He can't show you anything new. That is pride. You're walking in pride when you do that. And so a lot of people, if they've grown up in a certain way, if you bring them new information and you say, look, here it is in the text, in Isaiah 65, people eating pork are not entering the kingdom. They have tainted meat in their vessels. And you can read them the plain words that are connected to the day of the Lord, Yeshua's return, and they cannot even read the plain words on the paper, and how those plain words on the paper conflict with their understanding of the things happening in the New Testament. They just can't fathom it because they have all this old wine in their temples, in their wineskins, and that old wine is pumping through their brain the same old theology that they've always known. Okay. they're all, it's like they've been brainwashed into a certain theology, so to the point where they can't even read plain text. Okay, I see this all the time. The same thing was happening with Judah back in the day. Is they've got these particular sets of commandments, they've got these particular rituals, they have all these good things, and they've grown up in this and they've learned it their whole lives. So not very many of them at that time were able to see what Yeshua was doing. They weren't able to see what was being done. Okay, they were really stuck. And I always warn people against having really rigid eschatology, because if you have really rigid eschatology, like you've learned, there's 3.5 years here, we're waiting for this and we're waiting for that, and temple's got to be built, and da, 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 da. If you have really rigid theology on eschatology and you're not open to Yah showing you something new, you could just be exactly like this. You could have that old wine in your wineskin and not being able to see what he's doing, not be able to change course quickly if he's leading you in a different direction, because you have this old theology that's been passed down from generation to generation. Some of these theologies on eschatology have gone back hundreds of years, right? The scrolls and the understandings are not open until the end. So any theology from hundreds of years ago is coming from people who didn't have the full picture because the scrolls hadn't been started to open yet, right? The understanding. So what does it say in Daniel? Lock these things up, right? People will not understand them until the very end, and then it will start to be unlocked for them. Okay. So what is Yeshua saying here? No one puts new wine into old wineskins. Why? Because the wineskins get hard and they're not fresh leather anymore. And so fresh leather can expand and contract. And so as the wine ferments, the wineskin, the leather of the wineskin can expand and contract. It's leather, and sometimes they do like sheep bellies or something like that. But because that flesh is new, that flesh is fresh, it can expand and contract and be malleable with the new wine that's fermenting inside the container. Okay. If they put it in the old wineskins with all the old ideas that are rigid and they don't have any flexibility anymore, the rigid ideas, as soon as that wine starts to ferment, it busts the wineskin. It causes disruption because there's no flexibility there anymore, right? But that doesn't mean that the wine is bad. It doesn't mean that Yah's commandments are suddenly bad. It doesn't mean that the things that he's shown and laid out in scripture are bad. It means that we're going to look at them in a new way. We're going to look at them, with the spirit and truth together, right? Anyways, that is, I think, all I wanted to go through. I had something saved from the Talmud that I wanted to show you guys. I can't remember what it was about though. Yoma 23, the height of impurity. Oh yeah, this is so fascinating. Okay, two things I want to cover just really quick is the Bethusians, and then I want to cover this. So during the reign of Herod, just before Yeshua, Herod married into a Jewish family and then instilled priests into the priesthood from his family. And these were counterfeit priests. So if we look at the Bothus family, the Bothus family are related to the Bethusians. They generated the Bethusians, okay? Simon, the son of Bothus from Alexandria, was made high priest in 25 BCE by Herod the Great in order that his marriage with Bethus's daughter Marianne might not be regarded as a marriage with a person to be unsuitable or of a lower position. So Herod had married, because he was going to rule Judea, had married a Jewish girl. And then he had taken, and so wait, the high priest was made high priest in order that his marriage to Bothus's daughter Marianne. Okay, so he took and made, I think it would be Mariani's brother into the high priest position. So now that puts Herod into the family of the high priest. You know what I'm saying? So he's manipulating and putting people into positions that so that he can have that control. Okay, so he can be the kingly high priest, etc., and have the control over the temple. And so this is kind of the point where things kind of get really wonky with extra wonky with the what's going on in the temple. Okay, the Bethusians at that point forward, and if you just look up Bethusians on Wiki, you can read about them and read about what they believe in, etc., etc. They ended up developing into the Sadducees. Okay, and the Sadducees were active during Yeshua's time. Yeah. So definitely something to look into is the Bethusians, because at that point is when we start to see there's this history recording of when the high priest would start to go into the into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, they would usually die, if not always die. And so they started to tie a rope around the high priest's waist. And could the reason that these high priests were dying, could that be because of this, right? This switcheroo of the priesthood? Could be, obviously. And so these high priests, who were not supposed to be the high priests, would be going into the temple or going into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, which is the only time the high priest would go in, and they would be losing high priests like every year. And this went on for 80 years or so. And so they would tie a rope around the high priest's waist so that they could drag the body out on Yom Kippur. Now, I found this thing in the Talmud about this. So I'm gonna find it again. Yoma 23, if you want to look this up, this is just kind of a write-up on Yoma 23, which you'll find in the Talmud. So this person is talking about about all the impurity rituals. So I wonder if I should just read this whole thing. Yeah, okay. In the theme we often see from Yoma, the Mashit Yoma, many of the preparatory steps regarding the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, Kohen Gadol, the high priest, for the special day of Yom Kippur were necessary by the ignorance of many high priests. People who received their positions of all kinds, save for merit, brought some brought their positions, and some bought their positions, and some were Sadducees. So some had purchased their positions in the priesthood, and some were Sadducees who did not accept the rabbinic understanding of how the service was to be done. This was for good reason, for the fear that the Kohen Gadol would not follow the prescribed service on Yom Kippur. The Yom Kippur service had the ability to gain atonement for the sins of the entire nation, Jewish nation. With such power, any misstep could be deadly. With corruption was rampant. With corruption, weird sentence. It was rare, if ever, that the high priest survived the year. Our sages claim that there are over 300 high priests during the Second Temple period, a period the sages claim lasted 420 years. So in 420 years, they lost 300 high priests. When one removes the 40, so this was happening even before, this corruption must have been happening even before Herod started with the Bethusians, which is interesting as well. When one removes the 40 years that Shimon Hisak served, the 80 years of Yochanan Cohen Godel, the length of 10 years that Yishmael Pen Babi, that leaves some 300 priests that spread out over only 290 years. So they removed the ones that stood in place for a long time. And then that changed the math to 300 high priests in only 290 years. This meaning the average length of service was less than 1 year. Apparently, some were so corrupt that they even died before their first Yom Kippur. But not only was it the corrupt that had a deeply flawed understanding of true religiosity, the second chapter of Mashat Yoma opens with the description of the daily temple service. The first task of the day was Tamud Hadishin, the cleaning of the ashes from the altar of the prior day sacrifices. This was carried out before dawn and is not what one would necessarily consider a glamorous work. Hence, initially, whoever wishes to remove the ashes of the altar removes them. Whoever would want to get up at 3 a.m. and who would want to get up at 3 a.m. and remove some ashes. On those occasions when one or more Kohen would get up early to volunteer, they would race to the top of the altar. And the Kohen who preceded the other and reaches within 4 cubits of the altar would merit to be chosen. If it was a tie, the Kohen would put out 1 or 2 fingers. There is little new under the sun. And one of the officials would call out a number and they would count the fingers to determine who would get the honor. So they would do like a little kind of ritual, like whoever gets the correct number gets to shovel the ashes from the altar. And so they were competing for this. Alas, this was no friendly lottery. The Mishnah rules that one was not allowed to put out a thumb, as that would make cheating easy. As the numbers wound down, the prospective Kohen could clandestinely either put out, or take back the thumb so that the number would land on them. They might win the lottery, but surely the mitzvah would be tainted. But that problem is minor compared to what comes next. One time, the Mishnah records that as the Kohanim were running up the ramp, one pushed the other off the ramp, breaking his leg. Upon witnessing this, the sages ordained that they would remove the ashes from the altar only through a lottery. How terrible when the desire to do a mitzvah allows one to hurt his fellow Jew. But tragically, in the case of the Mishnah, the Mishnah is called child's play compared to the case referenced in the Gemara. So this case in the Mishnah is child's play referenced to this other case in the Gemara. A rabbis taught, as it once happened, that 2 priests were equal as they ran to the mount of the ramp. And when one of them came within 4 cubits of the altar, the other took a knife and thrust it into his heart. There is little more dangerous than misplaced religious fervor. Religious teachings have brought us so much good in the world, yet so much killing has been carried out in the name of Yah. As tragic as this murder in the temple was, the reaction of some was truly appalling. The Gemara relates that as the wounded boy's father came as his son was still convulsing, he declared, "Behold, he is your atonement." As death can serve as atonement, the father declared, while his son was still alive, that the death of his son would serve as atonement for the people. With people like that, there was much to atone for. That's fascinating. But the father was not yet finished. My son is still in convulsions, and the knife has not become unclean. Because the son hadn't died yet, the knife had not become unclean. Yoma 23a. Jewish law states that an object that comes in contact with a dead body becomes impure. Remove the knife before death, and the knife remains pure. As the son lay dying, the father was worried about the laws of purity and impurity. And is there a better example to demonstrate the teaching of our sages, used them properly? Torah can be a potion of death. Tanit 7a. They're quoting Tanit 7a. The Gemara commented on this horrific scene. the Gemara, commenting on this horrific scene, wryly notes, this teaches you that the ritual purity of utensils was more of a concern to them than the shedding of blood. So take this back to this conversation we were having about Yeshua and the purification. So there was the purification jugs at the wedding, right? For the waters of purification. So those purification jugs would have been used to clean utensils, to wash hands, to do the purification rituals so that all the utensils were made clean and all the things were clean. And this is, again, we've talked about this many times, is this is what Christianity doesn't realize, is when Yeshua is talking about, and Paul are talking about clean and unclean eating, a lot of times it's related to these really added on purity rituals. Like there's no command in the Torah that I've ever read to purify a knife to eat at a wedding, right? Or to purify these certain things, right? So you can see how these purity laws and these things had become so convoluted that they were taking away from everything that Yah was trying to show them, right? So they had put the purity of utensils above shedding of blood, above these much deeper issues. But do notice that this is being talked about in the Gemara, which is a Jewish document, negatively, right? So there's been these phases where this has happened, but there's also these phases where they write about this and say how wrong this is as well, okay? God gave us a beautiful Torah. The Torah is meant to enhance, enrich, and elongate life. But when the name of the Torah, one's reaction to tragedies, is that they are a means to atonement, when the laws of purity become more important than life itself, the power of the Torah has become most harmful. And when this happens, we need many days of atonement to reflect on what went wrong and how it can be fixed. Sorry, just reading the rest. Fascinating story. I know I've talked about this before, like a lot of the rituals too, and the way that, so when you see Paul talking about not eating at the tent, or people not wanting to eat at the table with Gentiles and stuff like that, at that time, the Jews would think that if a Gentile even touched your glass of wine, it would be unclean, it would be impure, and you can't eat from it, you can't drink from it. Some of these things have carried on today in different sects. So this is why people are so confused about the food and the purification stuff in the New Testament, because they don't know the context. This is the context, right? That the knife was made clean, etc., etc. This was the context of this stuff. Now, even today in Jewish households, Orthodox Jewish households, they take their dishes, like if you buy a new pot or pan or new dishes, you take them down to the synagogue and you baptize your dishes. And then once you baptize your dishes, you can bring them home and then they're purified for you to use. So anytime you purchase a new dish, you go down to the synagogue, you baptize your dishes, and then you can take them home, da, da, da. So you can see how these things become a heavy burden on people, and how that would be, it's not in the Torah, like it's not in the Torah. It's in the oral tradition, but it's not in the Torah commands, okay? And hopefully that gives you a lot more insight into why Paul is talking about clean and unclean foods and eating in the marketplace and da da da. So when he's talking about these things, he's not saying go and eat pork, go and defy the Torah commands, the clear Torah commands. He's saying don't be concerned if a Gentile serves you a glass of wine, right? He's not saying go eat a bacon sandwich. He's saying don't be concerned about all the purification rituals. Those things were added on to the Torah. That's why Paul says circumcision doesn't, what does he say? Circumcision, it doesn't matter. I'll just look it up.
First Corinthians 7:19. Circumcision is nothing. What does circumcision mean in the context of Paul speaking here? He's not talking about the act of circumcision. He's saying being a Jew, going through the process and being a Jew is nothing. Uncircumcision, being a Gentile, is nothing. But what matters is keeping the commands of Yah. Okay? Still keep the commands of Yah. You don't need to become a Jew and be an Orthodox rabbinical Jew. It's not about that. It's about understanding that you are keeping the commandments of Yah. Okay? Which includes circumcision eventually as well. We've gone through this too. Abraham was not circumcised right away. He was circumcised later. Circumcision is a big picture. I've gone through this before. We won't go again through it today, but anywho, that's all I have to say, which is obviously a lot. We'll leave it there for today. And this recording will be up on YouTube and it'll be in my discipleship training. If you want to support me and the time that I put into this and support my efforts and help me back, bless me back, you can go to my website. There's various ways to do that there. And also signing up for the discipleship training is really helpful to me because it lets me know that people are interested and that they are supporting this. Okay. So please consider that as an option to bless me back. And of course, keep me in your prayers always.